Today I'm going to introduce you to a lesser-known pilgrimage route in northwestern Spain, the Camino Invierno, or the so-called winter route. During medieval times, pilgrims chose this route, diverting from the main Camino Francés pilgrimage route because the mountains outside of Lugo were covered in snow and were at times very treacherous. The route is about 300 kilometers long, diverting from the city of Ponferrada, and it will take you about 2 weeks to walk, depending on how many kilometers you choose to walk every day. The Camino Invierno is really a lovely alternative to the Camino Francés, which is far more populated, and you can actually divert from the town of Ponferrada and then take this lovely route through these beautiful old villages. We had a really interesting discussion yesterday with fellow pilgrims about the motivation and the questions some pilgrims have. It's either walking away from something or walking to something. So that got me thinking that sometimes doors close, and many pilgrims on the Camino are at a crossroads of something new and starting a new chapter in life. And the Camino then is all about listening and perceiving the whispers of the universe. I would always recommend starting a Camino with a shorter walk on the first day, just to attune your body and mind to this lengthy walk. We started from Ponferrada, crossing a beautiful bridge along a river, and then walking along some small hills and along through some orchards until we reached the small hamlet of Prieranza del Bierzo, where we stayed overnight. This particular route offers spectacular views and immersion into nature. Ancient chestnut trees lined a steep path overlooking the Castillo de Cornatal, linked to the Knights Templars, who held many strategic fortresses in the 12th century along this route. Closer to Las Medullas, there is a striking red landscape of eroded hills and caves, the result of massive Roman gold mining operations dating back to Emperor Augustus. Not an easy 20-kilometer walk by any means, because no places to stop for drinks or coffee, but really worth it. And it's another 20 kilometers to Sobradella, passing into Galicia province shortly after leaving the town of Puente de Domingo Flores. In 2022, a major fire destroyed 400 hectares of forest in this area. Several towns had to be evacuated. Yet it's wonderful to see how nature has reclaimed the raised land with new vegetation. In a deserted hamlet, we viewed a kiln similar to ones found in Egypt and Mesopotamia, dating back 4000 BC. In Spain, they evolved into a Moorish kiln used mainly for cooking, or the manufacture of plaster or lime. So far, my resume is that the Camino Invierno is definitely worth walking if you can do without company for long stretches. We met in total only 2 pilgrims, but you are rewarded with beautiful scenery and complete solitude. Along the Camino paths in Galicia, you instantly notice great care being taken of the Camino. You can't get lost here, with clear way markings and distances indicated. It becomes clear in interaction with locals that they really appreciate pilgrims along this route. I felt reminded of the early years on the Camino Francés, with locals greeting the pilgrim with a friendly Buen Camino. Beautifully painted murals mostly have a Camino theme. The path meanders through Entoma, a beautiful village with many old homes sadly in decay. The path along the River Sil through Obarco is particularly scenic, and plenty of places to stop for coffee prior to the final stretch to Villa Martin. The Invierno is steeped in Roman history, with an estimated 190 tons of gold once extracted from this valley. Many of the ancient mining tunnels, carved by slave hands, have been repurposed over the centuries as wine cellars, now home to some truly excellent local vintages. The approach to Monteferrado, though largely along paved roads, rewards travellers with sweeping views of the Sil River Valley. Along the way, local artists have added a creative touch. The trees have been adorned with vibrant works of art, bringing unexpected bursts of colour to the landscape. The nearby hamlet of Os Alvarados also features some of the artistic flair, with many homes displaying similar painted motifs over their doorways. Monteferrado itself is a place caught between history, depopulation and decline. Signs of abandonment are visible in the many homes marked for sale and the crumbling remains of old homes. Yet even in its fading state, the village tells a powerful story of ancient ingenuity, rural tradition and quiet resilience. Upon leaving Monteferrado, a warm and welcoming local woman guided us through the town's 18th century church, whose stunning interior is crowned by a magnificent image of St. Michael on the main altar. From there, the route offers breathtaking views of the Sil River as it winds toward the charming hamlet of Bendillo. One of the most memorable stretches begins just beyond Os Novais, where you cross a beautifully restored Roman bridge. Here centuries of history come alive. The grooves etched by wagon wheels are still visible in the time-worn cobblestones. The path then leads you through serene vineyards before arriving in the town of Quiroga. And a long walk over the rolling hills of Galicia. A devastating wildfire in July 2022 destroyed over 11,000 hectares of forest between Quiroga, Apobra and Dobrolon. Yet it is a miracle to see how the scrubland and indigenous plants have recovered, offering a home to countless insects and birdlife. The regional government of Galicia has launched reforestation projects, notably restoring a chestnut grove and removing burnt timber. A chapel on the hilltop in reverence to the Madonna miraculously survived the flames. Finally, on arrival in Pobra de Brolon, the reward, the best tapas on the Camino so far. Nature and faith have long been closely entwined in Galicia. The quiet beauty of birdsong, solitude, and crystal clear creeks, bringing renewal to heart, body, and mind. As Monforte de Lemos comes into view, the monastery of San Vicente del Pino rises gracefully atop a hill. The 10th century Benedictine monastery is now partially a Parador hotel. Below, nestled in a rocky grotto, is a statue of the Virgin Mary, awaiting pilgrims seeking stillness. This hidden shrine offers a moment of quiet reflection, a space to pause and contemplate her silent presence, offering protection and guidance on the. Leaving Montfort de Lemos, the first 2 hours follow mundane stretches of tarmac, with sections of the original route now closed. But then the path rewards you with beautiful ancient tracks winding through quiet forest. There's a quiet awe in walking the same dusty trails that pilgrims have trodden for centuries. Once again, it was mostly a solitary day, no other pilgrims in sight, even though we're now just 120 kilometers from Santiago. The countryside remains pristine, not a scrap of rubbish or toilet paper in sight. Watching several storks circling overhead was a powerful reminder that this part of Galicia still enjoys a healthy, intact ecosystem. Dense fog cloaked the valley as we departed from O Camino Grande, casting the morning in an almost mystical light. A little sunlight danced between the trees, while the path descended steeply along an ancient Roman road, winding its way toward the village of Belessar, nestled on the banks of the Rio Minho. Remarkably, a half-kilometre stretch of this stone-paved Roman road was only unearthed 4 years ago. This region has long been both wine country and pilgrimage route. One can easily imagine carts laden with wine vats groaning over the stones, with the occasional pilgrim making their solitary way along the misty trail. This was without question the most demanding section of the Camino Invierno, the path twisting and straining upward toward Monte Faro, rising to 1,187 meters, and with each step the horizon stretched wider until finally at the summit the whole of Galicia seemed to open up with a spectacular view. Here history runs deep. In the 18th century, archaeologists uncovered traces of sacred ground beneath this mountain, once a pagan sanctuary, then a Romanesque temple, and now the Ermida de Nossa Senhora do Faro, a modest hermitage that's stood in some form since at least the 6th century. The current chapel, rebuilt in the 1600s and lovingly restored in 1726, holds within it a neoclassical altarpiece that feels both timeless and weather-worn, like the mountain itself. Every September, pilgrims return to this peak, following a path that winds past ancient fountains said to hold healing waters. They gather under the open sky for mass, music, and shared meals, echoing centuries of devotion. It's one of those magically thin places on the Camino. The first part of the Camino Invierno from Ponferrada starts off with picture-beautiful postcard cherry orchards, followed by gorgeous vineyards along the Minho River and their sweet scent of herbs floating through the air like nature's own aromatherapy. But don't get too comfortable on this section of the Invierno. You are deep in animal farm territory, where the only thing stronger than your spirit is the smell of cow dung and pigsties, and there is no escaping the eau de barnyard generously sprayed across every field. Then, as if the Camino decided you've had enough fun for one day, you emerge from the woods into the town of Lalín. It's just 50 kilometers from Santiago now. After 2 long days of walking, we took time off to enjoy some sightseeing along the route. Just 300 meters from the Camino path lies the Pazzo degli Ignares Museum and Cultural Center, a beautifully restored 17th century manor, originally built by the noble Taboada family. Once fallen into ruin by the early 20th century, it has since been brought back to life and now houses archaeological artifacts from the region as well as a charming collection of toys and puppetry. The path to Cereda winds through serene forest, ancient cobblestone trails, and graceful old bridges, adding to the sense of timeless discovery. This section of the Invierno weaves between serene ancient forest paths and stretches of tarmac. Towering trees, some centuries old, line parts of the trail like silent guardians, their presence lending a quiet mystique to the path. Of special note is the Ponte de Pedra, an old stone bridge steeped in history. Nearby once stood a significant medieval pilgrims' hospital. The day ends in the peaceful town of Donelas, with a restful overnight stay at Casaleras, a welcoming albergue set amid pastoral Galician countryside serenity. This route winds mostly through shady forest paths, punctuated by serene views of Galicia's rolling green hills. Just before reaching Lestedo, the trail skirts a mystical landmark, Pico Sacro, where legend and history converge in tales of St. James and ancient myth. On our clear day, we caught the first glimpse of the cathedral spires of Santiago, shimmering in the distance. It's almost impossible to grasp what it must have felt like for medieval pilgrims, exhausted after months on the road and having endured unimaginable hardship, to finally see their journey's end on the horizon. We are on the very last stretch of the Camino Invierno. For the past 2 weeks we must barely have seen like half a dozen other pilgrims, while at the same time there's about 3,000 pilgrims arriving in Santiago each day. The upside of this route is that it's beautiful scenery. You're walking through cherry orchards, vineyards and lovely mountains where you have a beautiful overview of the Galician countryside. The downside, of course, is that there are very long legs where you don't have any cafe or anything in between, so you have to take a lot of water, a lot of refreshments as you go along. But if you really want to enjoy the scenery and have some peace and quiet, this is the route you want to take.